Why did humanity build this tower 10,000 years ago? The reality of the Tower of Jericho that shook the archaeological world. Introduction. The Tower of Jericho, built during the dawn of human civilization, has long been celebrated as the oldest architectural structure in the world. Located at the ancient site of Tel Sultan in the Jordan Valley, this stone tower holds deep significance as material evidence testifying to one of the most fundamental turning points in human history, beyond just a simple ancient artifact. About 10,000 years ago, this massive construction project undertaken by an early community of the Neolithic era, which was transitioning from a nomadic lifestyle of hunting and gathering to a settled agricultural society, posed an unsolved mystery to the field of archaeology. What motivated this early human community to put in such tremendous effort to build the tower? What was its purpose? And what does this tower tell us about the society of that time? This tower should be understood not merely as a pile of stones, but as a symbol of humanity's grand attempt to organize communities, understand the universe, and establish social order in the face of the new existential challenge of settled life. 1. Discoveries at Tel Sultan excavation of a Neolithic primitive city. Understanding the Tower of Jericho begins with examining how the archaeological discoveries at the site, particularly the innovations in excavation methodology, have completely transformed interpretations of human history. Tel Sultan, the mound of ancient Jericho. The Tel Sultan, where the Tower of Jericho is located, is an archaeological site of ancient Jericho formed by layers of human habitation activities accumulated over thousands of years, known as a tell. A crucial factor that allowed this site to become one of humanity's first settlements was the nearby Ain es-Sultan spring. This spring, which never dries up in the desert climate, provided an essential prerequisite for settled life as a stable water source. The deep layers of Tel Sultan contain 29 residential layers that date back to around 10,500 BC, serving as a special archive that preserves the history of human development. Recognized for its unique value, Tel Sultan was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2023 under the name Ancient Jericho. Tel Sultan. The most significant figure in the archaeology of Tel Sultan is the British archaeologist Dame Kathleen Kenyon, who revolutionized methodology. Her excavations from 1952 to 1958 hold significant importance not only for discovering new artifacts, but also for reinterpreting the essence of the site through innovations in excavation methodology. The Wheeler-Kenyon method she introduced was an adaptation of the stratigraphic excavation techniques she learned from her mentor, Sir Mortimer Wheeler, tailored to the specific conditions of the site. This method involves dividing the archaeological site into a grid and carefully excavating in controlled trenches or boxes, while leaving earthen walls called bulks between each trench. The cross-section of this borehole reveals several layers strata, depending on the colour and texture of the soil and the artefacts contained within, allowing for a scientific reconstruction of the relative chronology of the site through precise recording and analysis. In particular, by meticulously analysing the relationships between artefacts such as structures and pottery fragments found in each layer, it was possible to clearly determine which artefacts were used alongside buildings from which periods. This approach was fundamentally different from previous excavation methods that ignored stratigraphy and focused primarily on the shape of the buildings. Kenyon's most important discovery was made through this scientific methodology. The previous excavator, John Garstang, interpreted the massive walls as related to the biblical story of Joshua's conquest, dating them to the late Bronze Age, around 1400 BC. However, Kenyon proved through stratigraphic analysis that only stone tools from a period before the invention of pottery were consistently found in the layers where the tower and walls were discovered, not Bronze Age pottery. This objective evidence led to the revolutionary conclusion that the dating of the tower and walls dates back thousands of years earlier than the existing consensus, corresponding to the pre-pottery Neolithic A period, PPNA, around 8000 BC. This discovery pushes back the origins of monumental architecture and organized community life by thousands of years, fundamentally altering the existing understanding of the dawn of civilization. In this way, the discovery of the Tower of Jericho is a powerful example of how archaeological methodology influences historical interpretation. While John Garstang attempted to interpret the ruins through the narrative framework of the Bible, Kenyon allowed the ruins to reveal their own story through the scientific methodology of stratigraphy. This clearly demonstrates that archaeology is not merely the act of finding artifacts, but a discipline that develops scientific methodologies to understand their meanings within the correct context. The discovery of the mound was an intellectual achievement realized through methodological innovation beyond just physical excavation. An architectural analysis of Neolithic monuments. The architectural features of the Tower of Jericho, revealed through Kenyon's excavations and subsequent studies, are as follows. Location and context. The tower is situated on the western side of the tell, inside the massive stone wall that surrounds the settlement. Scale and construction method. It is a solid stone structure reaching a height of 8.5 meters, shaped like a cone. The diameter of the base is about 9 meters, gradually narrowing towards the top, where the diameter reaches 7 meters. The wall thickness is approximately 1.5 meters. It was built using large, uncut stones stacked neatly to maintain a consistent horizontal level. Internal staircase. The most unique and intricate feature of the tower is the spiral staircase that penetrates through the interior. Made of a total of 22 flat stones, this staircase connects all the way to the top. The fact that this staircase is very narrow is noteworthy, as it suggests that it is not practical for many people to ascend and descend simultaneously while engaging in defensive acts. 2. The world of the builders. The society and life of PPNA Jericho. The Tower of Jericho, a massive monument, serves as a mirror reflecting the structure and capabilities of the society that created it. Using the tower itself as key evidence, we can reconstruct the socio-economic environment of the people of Jericho during the PPNA period. The first city, from a Natufian campsite to a Neolithic settlement. The settlement at Tepe Sultan originated from a late Paleolithic Natufian hunting and gathering campsite near Sultan Spring, dating back to around 10,000 BC. By the time of the PPNA period, around 9,500 BC, this temporary campsite developed into a permanent settlement where people lived year-round, which is considered one of the world's first cities. The population at that time is estimated to have ranged from as few as 200 to as many as 3,000 people. The residents lived in round or oval-shaped houses built with mud bricks on a stone foundation, practicing early agriculture by cultivating emmer and barley, while supplementing their food by hunting wild animals. The social implications of the massive project. The construction of walls and towers reaching a height of 3.6 meters was an unprecedented scale of a large-scale joint venture for that era. According to one estimate, it is calculated that this construction involved more than 100 workers for over 100 days, totaling more than 10,000 people. This was a tremendous investment of labor for small-scale early agricultural communities, and this figure serves as strong, indirect evidence that the society at the time had a considerable level of organization beyond mere statistics. This massive project would have served as a measure of the complexity of the society at the time, while also acting as a catalyst that deepened that complexity. The Tower of Jericho is not just a simple outcome produced by a highly organized society. In fact, the very process of constructing the tower required key social structures that define a more advanced society, such as leadership, planning, and division of labor. And it is likely that this process further strengthened these structures. This reasoning can be concretized through the following step-by-step thinking. First, in early agricultural societies, mobilizing a large workforce for tasks not directly related to food production was a significant challenge due to the limited surplus labor and resources. Second, to solve this, there had to be an authoritative leadership group capable of overseeing the complex process of planning the construction of the tower, persuading the community of its necessity, and extracting and transporting the stones to build it. Third, the involvement of over 10,000 laborers implies that a significant number of the male population were not engaged in farming or hunting during the construction period. This suggests that other members were producing enough food surplus to support them, indicating the existence of an organized economy and division of labor beyond family units. Fourth, to motivate community members to endure such immense sacrifices of time and energy, strong motivation was essential. This motivation may have stemmed from a shared fear of floods or external threats, powerful religious and cosmological beliefs related to celestial movements, or social pressure from a newly emerging elite class. In conclusion, the Tower of Jericho is a physical evidence of cognitive and social revolution. It serves as an indicator of a level of social organization that far surpasses a simple egalitarian agricultural village. Furthermore, the act of planning and constructing the tower itself solidified the newly forming social hierarchy and communal identity, acting as a catalyst for social development. 3. An unsolvable riddle. A critical analysis of the tower's function. The ultimate purpose of the Tower of Jericho has been the subject of the most intense debate among scholars since its discovery. This section critically evaluates the main hypotheses based on evidence and traces the evolution of academic thought. Hypothesis 1. Defensive fortress, Kenyon's early theory. The excavator Kenyon interpreted the tower as part of an organized defense system, noting that it was connected to massive city walls. This interpretation became the basis for defining Jericho as the world's first fortified city. However, this theory faced several serious criticisms. First, there is little archaeological evidence of organized warfare or violent conflicts between settlements during the PPNA period. Second, a more decisive weakness is the position of the tower. The tower is located inside the city walls, which is a tactically very disadvantageous position for shooting arrows at approaching enemies or monitoring the surroundings. Hypothesis 2. Flood prevention facilities. Bar Yosef's theory. Archaeologist Ofer Bar Yosef argued that the walls were built to protect the settlement from natural threats, specifically sudden floods and mudslides occurring from the nearby Wadi dry riverbed. This hypothesis convincingly explains the existence of the massive walls and moat, but it fails to provide a clear answer regarding the function of the tower. It is difficult to see a tall and sturdy stone tower as an essential element of a flood prevention system. Hypothesis 3. A symbol of power, community, and ideology. This series of theories goes beyond purely practical explanations, focusing on the social and psychological influence that the tower held. The tower can be interpreted as a political symbol to showcase the community's strength and territorial ownership, both internally and externally. In particular, archaeologist Ran Barkai argues that the tower was a device that evoked awe and intimidation. In other words, it served as a motivational mechanism to encourage people to accept the harder labor and new social hierarchies that came with the transition to agricultural life. The tower was, in essence, a physical manifestation of the newly established social order. Hypothesis 4. An astronomical observatory, the latest theory by Barkai and Leran. The most recently presented compelling hypothesis, proposed by Ran Barkai and Roy Leran through computer modeling, connects the tower to astronomical phenomena. According to their simulation results, at sunset on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the shadow of Mount Caruntal nearby first touches the top of the tower, creating a dramatic phenomenon that quickly envelops the entire settlement. This strongly suggests that the tower was intentionally constructed as a marker to observe celestial bodies and the movement of the sun. This majestic spectacle, which repeats every year, likely held profound ritualistic and cosmological significance that connected the community to the important cycles of the sun and seasons in an agricultural society. In other words, the tower may have functioned as a magical defense against darkness and a device for measuring time. These various hypotheses reveal the complex nature of the tower better when understood as complementary rather than mutually exclusive. Rather than choosing a single theory, it is important to examine how they can be organically connected. In particular, the astronomical function does not negate the socio-political function, rather it provides the mechanism for its operation. The phenomenon of shadows during sunset is powerful and predictable, and it must have appeared to people at the time as a supernatural spectacle. A small elite group that understood the cycles of this celestial body, such as the early priest class or chieftains, may have claimed that they could mediate or control this phenomenon. By erecting a massive tower at the center of this cosmic event, this elite group was able to physically demonstrate a special connection to the heavens, and thereby secure social authority on Earth. The authority secured in this way would have mobilized the enormous labor force needed for the construction of the tower, and served as a foundation to justify a new social order of settled agricultural society. Of course, in crisis situations such as floods or external invasions, it is also possible that this tower was used for surveillance or defense purposes as a secondary function. Therefore, it seems most reasonable to understand the Tower of Jericho as a multifunctional monument that signifies the emergence of theocratic power, where control over cosmic knowledge was used to establish and maintain social control. 4. Contextualization of Jericho. The construction of monumental structures in the Neolithic Fertile Crescent. To understand the true significance of the Tower of Jericho, it is necessary to illuminate it within a broader archaeological context, particularly in relation to other monumental sites of the same era. The challenge of Göbekli Tepe. For decades, the Tower of Jericho has been regarded as the first monumental architecture of humanity. However, the discovery of the Göbekli Tepe site in modern Turkey has challenged this notion. Radiocarbon dating results reveal that the oldest structures at Göbekli Tepe were built around 9,500 BC, which is over 1,000 years earlier than the Tower of Jericho, constructed around 8,300 BC. Göbekli Tepe is a complex archaeological site consisting of several structures made up of intricately carved, massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in a circular formation. The decisive difference between the two sites lies not merely in their chronology, but in their context and function. Göbekli Tepe is widely interpreted as a massive religious ceremonial center, or temple, built by groups of hunter-gatherers who lived a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle. No evidence of permanent habitation has been found at the site itself. In contrast, the Tower of Jericho is an integrated component of a permanent, settled agricultural city. It was not a remote ceremonial center, but was situated at the heart of the community's daily life. This comparison fundamentally questions the traditional, linear model of the Neolithic Revolution. The existing model assumed a sequential development of the beginning of agriculture, permanent settlement, social complexity, and the establishment of religion monuments. However, these two sites demonstrate that the path to civilization was much more complex and diverse. The existence of Göbekli Tepe suggests that the social organization necessary for large-scale religious ritual activities and monument construction could have preceded the complete establishment of agriculture. Some scholars even argue that the need to sustain the labor force that gathered to construct and use Göbekli Tepe may have been a key driving force behind the invention of agricultural tech. In other words, religion may have been a cause rather than a result of settlement. In contrast, Jericho shows a perhaps more classical path, where monumental architecture arises within an already established agricultural city. The Tower of Jericho is related to defining and organizing the community in a new and permanent dwelling. In conclusion, these two sites prove that there was no singular Neolithic revolution. Instead, there were various regional pathways leading to social complexity. While Göbekli Tepe represents a monument for sacred gatherings, the Tower of Jericho represents a monument for settled communities. V. The legacy of the tower, from ancient ruins to world heritage. Finally, we assess its modern legacy through the enduring significance of the Tower of Jericho and the official recognition by the international community. UNESCO World Heritage Listing 2023. The archaeological site of ancient Jericho, Tel es Sultan, has been officially inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. This decision internationally recognizes that this site possesses outstanding universal value that must be preserved for all humanity. The inscription as a World Heritage Site not only helps secure international financial and expert support for the preservation of the site, but also holds significant meaning in strengthening its status as a Palestinian cultural heritage. Basis for outstanding universal value. UNESCO recognized the outstanding universal value of Tel es Sultan based on two key criteria. Criterion 3. It must be an outstanding or at least exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or civilization that is either living or has disappeared. UNESCO stated that Tel es Sultan uniquely testifies to the process by which Neolithic humans transitioned to a settled lifestyle and developed social and ritual methods for new livelihood strategies and communal life. The Tower of Jericho appoint the registration criteria 4. It should be a building, architecture, or technology that demonstrates significant stages in human history, an ensemble, or an outstanding example of landscape. UNESCO has evaluated this site, which includes monumental architecture like towers, as an outstanding example that illustrates the Neolithic process and the rise of early urban culture in the Fertile Crescent. UNESCO's decision elevates the Tower of Jericho from a subject of professional academic debate to a monument symbolizing the universal history of humanity. The value of this tower lies not merely in its age or size, but in its representation of humanity's first monumental step towards a world defined by cities, complex societies, and shared spaces. The transition from nomadism to settlement was the most fundamental change in human history and laid the foundation for all subsequent urban civilizations. The Tower of Jericho is the oldest and most powerful architectural expression of this moment of transition. The UNESCO Registration Criteria 3 clarify this symbolic and historical weight by focusing on lifestyle social change, and 4 on architecture, the physical evidence of that change. Therefore, the modern heritage of the tower, recognized by UNESCO, is a type of link that connects us to a decisive turning point in humanity, where our ancestors began to reshape the natural landscape as a product of a shared purpose, having decided to live together in large, organized communities. Conclusion. The Tower of Jericho is a remarkable structure from the Stone Age, a catalyst for social complexity, a subject of rich and evolving academic debate, and now a globally recognized monument, symbolizing a pivotal moment in the journey of humanity. The single and clear purpose of the tower may remain a mystery forever, but the ongoing quest to understand it will continue to reveal the creativity, ambition, and complex social and cosmological world that one of the world's first settled communities possessed.